Welcome to Fear and Greed, the week ahead. I'm Sean Aylmer, and as always, I'm joined by economist Stephen Koukoulas. You'll find him at thekouk.com and on X using the handle thekouk, T-H-E-K-O-U-K. Stephen, good morning. Cracking week we've had, cracking week we're going to have.
Oh, it's all happening. Last week was huge. The inflation numbers plus a whole lot of activity indicators. This week, in addition to the Melbourne Cup, we've got central bank meetings. We've got discussions on interest rates. It's all happening, as they say.
Righto, let's get last week out of the way. What did you make of it once we got those inflation figures? We also had building approvals, which ticked up, retail trade, house prices. What did you make of it all?
I did a little jig when I saw the inflation numbers, because I've been hoping and a wishing and a praying for those inflation numbers to come down. And while there is a hearty debate going on about trimmed mean inflation versus headline inflation versus services inflation and all of the above, it's good to see inflation tracking lower. So just to recap, the quarterly figures confirm that headline inflation at 2.8% in the 2 to 3 target range. The monthly figures are even lower. And yes, to be sure, a lot of it was driven by the subsidies that the federal government paid on electricity. Some state governments paid on electricity, public transport fares and these sorts of things. So there are a few one-off things that will probably end later rather than sooner. So maybe we should be discounting them a little bit. But even if you discount them and other things that are driven by government policy, tobacco prices went up 13%, and you've got school fees and these sorts of things which are outside the realm of the RBA. If you look at underlying inflation, core inflation, it's probably pretty low as well. And I think that's what the RBA will be considering when they meet tomorrow, because yes, we know the electricity prices are huge, but there's other things that probably overstate how high that trimmed mean inflation rate is.
Yeah, I mean, just quickly, the building approvals figures, retail trade, how do they fit into the equation?
Yeah, look, they were sort of pretty neutral, I think it's fair to say. Retail sales ticked up a little bit in September, the month of September, and that's after a decent sort of rise in August when the tax cuts were paid. Don't forget, we all got tax cuts on the 1st of July, and some of these subsidies sort of kicked into our savings accounts as well. So that's one reason why retail sales have probably stopped bleeding. And in fact, in real terms, volume terms, in the September quarter, retail sales were up 0.5%. So again, nice to have a plus sign on that. There haven't been many of them on consumer spending in the last couple of years, but again, not that blow away strong number. It rose for an obvious reason. So we'll see whether that continues. Building approvals. Sean,
yes,
you and I have been chatting for a while now about the urgent need to build more houses. This rental problem, house price affordability. And do you know what? Last week we saw building approvals numbers up 4.4% in the month. And in trend terms, because monthly they're volatile on a seasonally adjusted basis, in trend terms, they're up for 7 straight months, up 13% from the low point. So is this the building we had to supply to ensure that we can sort of correct these imbalances on housing? So that actually caused me to have a little jig in my step as well.
Fantastic. So you put all that together, you're sitting in there having a scone with the Reserve Bank board. What are you going to be talking about? Is there any chance? I mean, we had Andrew Hauser a couple of weeks ago saying, I don't know whether they're going to go up or down, just don't know. Is there any chance they're going to be a bit nice and say, look, most likely the next move is down or not?
I think there's enough in the numbers that have come out. Now, and this is including that blockbuster labour force we saw a couple of weeks ago, which confirmed unemployment ticking back down to 4.1%. But I think there's enough in the inflation numbers, whether they're the underlying or the headline figures. There's enough in the activity, retail sales, building approvals, net exports, these sorts of things, and what's happening globally for them to say, yeah, look, we can effectively rule out a rate hike. But those of us, myself included, getting a little bit excited about an imminent interest rate cut can just sort of cool their jets for a few more months. We do want to see further confirmation on all of the above. The activity numbers not recovering. We want to see, we don't want to see unemployment going up, but we're waiting for that to happen. And if even the next couple of monthly inflation indicators confirm that inflation's probably tracking within that 2 to 3 band, then we can cut interest rates. That's what's happening globally. And, we're going to be part of that party. It's just a matter of when.
Some good news. What about the election? Obviously, the US election, we've been talking about that. Then we also had the Federal Reserve, FOMC meeting this week. We have the Bank of England this week. What about all those international factors? What do you think is going to happen, and how much does it matter to the Reserve Bank?
Look, they're arguably going to be bigger than what the Reserve Bank's going to be doing. If the Fed does something unusual on interest rates, now a 25-point cut's basically priced in for later this week after the US election. So we'll get sort of information from the Fed about what they've done, a 25-point cut, and importantly, what they're doing. So Jerome Powell, the chairperson of the Federal Reserve, does a press conference. He's going to be grilled on all of the above. And by then, we'll probably know the US election result. And oh gosh, Sean, it looks to be pretty close. I don't know which way the voters in the US are going to go, but I think it's fair to say that whatever the result almost is going to be a bit of, what do we call it, volatility in markets, volatility in economics, until we see what the new administration does on tax, on the budget, which is still that, well, dare I say it, a sleeper issue that's sort of underlying some of the undercurrents in the bond market in recent months. That how big is that US budget deficit going to be in government debt? So who wins the election could well be that other factor that sort of creates market volatility, but also economic volatility with that.
Yeah, and Bank of England, will they do anything?
Bank of England, look, they're probably going to cut. They've had some better numbers in the UK just in the last few weeks. The GDP result was a touch better. Some of the labour market numbers were a touch better. Inflation is nice and low. So that's why there's probably going to be a 25-point cut. But we know a couple of the people on the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of England, the people who vote on whether the rates should go up or down or unchanged, are sort of a bit nervous about cutting too much too early, a bit like our RBA friends. So it's probably going to be a cut, but there's still this little bit of hedging there in the markets that they might not go. They might just leave them steady for this meeting.
I got to say, the budget from the UK Chancellor last week, which was incredibly tough. Maybe she's doing all the work for the for monetary policy guys. Finally, fiscal policy, at least in that country, is helping keep a little inflation.
Yeah, there's a bit of a lesson there for the US, whoever wins there, that, okay, nobody likes to pay more tax, nobody likes to have services cut, nobody likes to have their some of their personal benefit payments reduced, but that's what the new administration in the UK did. Yes, the budget was a corker. The tax take to GDP is skyrocketing. They're sort of cracking down on tax minimisation schemes. They're hiking taxes. It was the true austerity budget, but that's the thing that just might trigger the majority of the Bank of England committee to sort of, well, if the government's being tough on budget policy, if they're sucking out this, what was it, £40 billion, I think it is, which is a big number, then perhaps we can afford to trim rates without really risking an overheating of the economy. So, as always, so many moving parts in economics and money markets and financial markets.
And I haven't even got your tip yet. I mean, this is all okay, but what about the Melbourne Cup? Have you got a tip for us?
The Melbourne Cup. Look, I've had a look at the form, and over the weekend there are a couple of things that just sort of made me think about it. Via Sistina's not running, the brilliant winner of the Cox Plate the weekend before last, but we've had this sort of incredible form. I like the Map. Mm-hmm. That's the name of the horse, the Map.
The Map.
It's around about $26, around about $31, in between that range. I'm going to have a couple of shekels each way on that one.
On the Map, right? I might do so myself. Stephen,
you heard it here first.
The Map. Enjoy your week.
Thanks, Sean.
As economist Stephen Koukoulas, better known as The Kook. You can find him at thekook.com and follow him on X using the handle The Kook. I'm Sean Aylmer, and this is Fear and Greed, the week ahead.